The morning episode of The View was expected to unfold like any other, with lively chatter, playful banter, and the occasional pointed question tossed around between the panelists. Yet, as country music icon Reba McEntire took her seat at the iconic table, the atmosphere carried a slightly sharper edge. The studio audience was electric with excitement, eager to hear Reba's thoughts on her music career, her acting roles, and her perspective on the cultural conversations that often define daytime talk television. No one anticipated that within minutes, sparks would fly in such a way that the interview would become one of the most discussed episodes in recent memory. Joy Behar, known for her quick wit and unfiltered commentary, started the discussion by welcoming Reba with genuine warmth, praising her for decades of achievements across multiple industries. Reba responded with her trademark charm, blending humility with light-hearted anecdotes about her early struggles and the resilience required to thrive in the music business. The exchange began smoothly, but subtle undercurrents hinted that the dialogue might shift directions. The more Joy leaned into pointed social questions, the more Reba seemed ready to defend her beliefs with unshakable conviction. The first noticeable tension arose when Joy brought up the subject of politics in country music. She remarked that the genre often carried conservative undertones and asked whether artists like Reba felt pressured to fit into those expectations. Reba, though always gracious, firmly countered that her music transcended political lines, focusing on universal human emotions rather than partisan ideologies. She stressed the importance of respecting diverse perspectives, especially among fans from all walks of life. This response drew cheers from the audience but seemed to sharpen the glint in Joy's eyes. Joy followed up with a more direct question, pressing Reba about her stance on controversial cultural topics. At that moment, the energy in the room shifted palpably. Reba leaned forward, her voice calm yet resolute, making it clear she wasn't interested in being boxed into a narrative that misrepresented her values. She emphasized her role as an entertainer, not a politician, and suggested that television hosts sometimes stirred unnecessary division by framing artists in ways that didn't reflect their intentions. The audience applauded, though some panelists looked uneasy about the mounting friction. The conversation might have cooled down had Joy decided to pivot, but instead she doubled down. She referenced other celebrities who had taken strong political stances and implied that silence could sometimes be interpreted as complicity. This suggestion did not sit well with Reba, who straightened her posture and gave a measured yet fiery response. She asserted that every individual had the right to choose when, where, and how to share their beliefs, without being shamed for prioritizing their craft over political discourse. The tension between the two women grew more visible. The studio audience began to murmur, sensing the debate intensifying. Other co-hosts attempted to step in, offering lighter questions about Reba's latest projects, but Joy and Reba remained locked in a verbal duel. Reba's smile tightened as she repeated that she would not allow her artistry to be diminished by political expectations. Joy, however, quipped that public figures couldn't entirely separate art from influence. It was at this point the atmosphere reached a boiling point, the back and forth escalating with each carefully chosen word. Reba's patience, though impressive, began to show cracks as Joy interrupted her mid-sentence. The interruption sparked gasps from the audience, who were growing increasingly invested in the clash. Reba stopped, turned directly toward Joy, and with unwavering eye contact, reminded her that courtesy meant allowing someone to finish their thought. The sharpness of her tone carried a weight rarely heard from the usually upbeat singer. The room fell quiet for a moment, as if collectively holding its breath, waiting for Joy's reply. Instead of softening, Joy smirked and fired back with a sarcastic remark, dismissing Reba's plea as oversensitivity. That comment, though intended as humor, hit a nerve. Reba's expression hardened, her southern politeness giving way to a flash of frustration. She articulated, with striking clarity, that respect was not a matter of sensitivity but of principle. For Reba, being talked over was not just rude, it was emblematic of a culture that often disregarded voices that didn't conform. The crowd responded with a mix of cheers and uneasy murmurs. As the clash continued, Reba's voice grew stronger, carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades standing tall in an industry that often underestimated women. She declared that she would never apologize for setting boundaries or for insisting on mutual respect, regardless of the stage she stood on. Her words resonated deeply with viewers, many of whom began clapping in support. Yet Joy, unwilling to back down, gestured dismissively, implying that Reba was overreacting. This dismissal served as the final spark that ignited the dramatic conclusion. At that moment, Reba pushed back her chair, the sound echoing across the studio floor. The audience gasped as she stood up, her face composed yet undeniably firm. She glanced around the table, thanking the other co-hosts with a quick nod before turning her attention back to Joy. Her parting words, spoken with controlled intensity, underscored her unwillingness to be belittled on national television. Without waiting for a response, she walked off the set, her boots clicking against the floor as the camera crew scrambled to follow her exit. The moment Reba disappeared behind the curtain, the studio buzzed with nervous laughter, awkward clapping, and stunned silence. Joy, unfazed on the surface, tried to brush it off with a quip about people being too touchy these days. But the damage had already been done. The co-hosts glanced uneasily at one another, realizing the episode had veered far off script. Producers scrambled in the background, whispering urgently into earpieces, while audience members pulled out their phones to capture the fallout. Social media was already beginning to light up as clips circulated almost instantly online. Backstage, Reba was approached by crew members attempting to calm her down, but her expression revealed both disappointment and resolve. She wasn't shouting or throwing things. Instead, she carried herself with the dignity that had always marked her career. In her view, leaving the set was not a tantrum but a stand against behavior she considered disrespectful. Her team quickly rallied around her, assuring her that the optics would likely work in her favor. After all, millions admired her for being authentic and standing her ground. Meanwhile, on the live broadcast, the remaining hosts struggled to regain control of the program. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the steady hand, attempted to shift the conversation toward lighter topics, but the air remained thick with tension. Joy sat with her arms crossed, exuding a mix of defiance and discomfort. The other hosts, though professional, avoided piling on. They seemed to recognize that the moment would be dissected endlessly outside the studio and that anything they added could worsen the firestorm already brewing. Within minutes, Twitter and Instagram exploded with clips of Reba leaving the set. Hashtags like #Reba on The View and #RespectReba trended globally, with fans and critics weighing in. Many applauded her for refusing to be steamrolled by Joy's sharp tongue, while others debated whether walking out was the right move. Commentators began posting long threads about respect, celebrity responsibility, and the fine line between entertainment and confrontation. The sheer volume of discussion revealed just how much cultural weight the clash carried beyond the studio walls. Joy herself became a central target of both support and backlash. Her loyal fans defended her as someone who had always spoken her mind, unafraid to challenge big names. Yet critics accused her of deliberately provoking Reba to create controversy, labeling her behavior as rude and dismissive. The polarizing reactions underscored the larger cultural divide about how public figures should engage in sensitive conversations. Regardless of perspective, it was clear that this episode had struck a nerve far deeper than a standard daytime TV spat. Reba, back in her dressing room, finally addressed her team with calm but decisive words. She expressed frustration not about disagreement but about being interrupted and mocked. To her, it wasn't about politics or personal beliefs, it was about dignity. Her decades in the spotlight had taught her that audiences connected most strongly with artists who stayed true to themselves. Leaving the set wasn't about walking away from dialogue, it was about walking away from disrespect. Her team nodded in agreement, understanding that this narrative would resonate with her fans. Later that afternoon, entertainment outlets ran with headlines about the dramatic walkout. Tabloids framed it as a feud, while more measured publications analyzed the deeper implications of celebrity interviews turning into battlegrounds. Reba's representatives released a short statement emphasizing her respect for open conversation but also her refusal to be demeaned. The statement was widely shared, praised for its clarity and professionalism. Joy, however, remained silent for the rest of the day, fueling further speculation about whether she regretted her approach. As evening rolled around, late-night hosts began preparing monologues about the incident. Some treated it as comedy fodder, poking fun at the idea of a country legend storming off a talk show. Others approached it more seriously, noting that moments like this exposed the fragility of civil discourse in a hyper-polarized era. For Reba, the incident only bolstered her reputation as someone unwilling to compromise her values. Fans flooded her social media with messages of support, many recounting their own experiences of walking away from disrespectful exchanges. The following morning, The View addressed the controversy at the top of the show. Whoopi, once again playing the mediator, explained that while the program prided itself on spirited debate, it never intended for guests to feel uncomfortable. Joy, however, remained unapologetic. She reiterated that tough questions were part of the job and that public figures needed to accept them. Her remarks reignited the conversation online, as critics argued that tough questions were valid, but constant interruption and dismissiveness crossed a line into rudeness. Reba, for her part, appeared later that week on another talk show, where she was greeted with thunderous applause. She handled the questions with grace, never resorting to insults or bitterness. Instead, she doubled down on her philosophy of leading with respect, even in disagreement. She reminded viewers that art was meant to bring people together, not tear them apart, and that everyone had the right to walk away from conversations that crossed into disrespect. Her words further endeared her to audiences who admired her resilience in the days that followed. The story refused to fade. Clips of the walkout reached millions of views across platforms like YouTube and TikTok, where younger audiences, many unfamiliar with Reba's long career, discovered her for the first time. The viral nature of the incident breathed new life into her cultural presence, proving that even in unexpected moments, authenticity could command respect. Industry insiders noted that her reaction resonated across generational lines, reminding everyone that respect and boundaries were timeless values not confined to any one era. Meanwhile, Joy found herself grappling with the double-edged sword of notoriety. While some fans applauded her refusal to tiptoe around guests, many critics accused her of perpetuating a pattern of dismissive behavior that often overshadowed meaningful dialogue. Commentators on morning radio shows and podcasts revisited her past on-air clashes, drawing parallels and suggesting this was part of a larger trend. Joy, though seasoned and resilient, faced renewed scrutiny, and some wondered whether the network would pressure her to soften her approach in future interviews. Behind closed doors at the network, executives held emergency meetings to assess the fallout. Ratings for the episode had spiked dramatically, which pleased advertisers, but the controversy also risked alienating celebrity guests wary of similar confrontations. The producers debated strategies: should they lean into the spectacle, or recalibrate the tone of the show to reassure guests? While no final decisions were made, it was clear the incident had forced the team to reconsider how to balance entertainment with civility in a volatile media climate. Reba's response strategy proved masterful. Rather than fueling the feud, she continued emphasizing gratitude and dignity in her public remarks. When asked directly about Joy in interviews, she avoided personal attacks, simply reiterating her belief that mutual respect was non-negotiable. This restraint amplified her credibility, portraying her as a professional unwilling to be dragged into mudslinging. Her ability to maintain composure, even under provocation, became a central theme in coverage, elevating her beyond the drama and framing her as a model of strength. Fans organized online campaigns of support, using hashtags to flood social media with positive messages about Reba's music, acting career, and charitable efforts. Many shared personal stories of how her songs had carried them through difficult times, tying their admiration for her artistry to her stand on The View. This wave of digital solidarity highlighted the powerful bond between artists and their audiences. It wasn't just about one heated exchange, it was about the values she embodied and the loyalty she had earned over decades. Joy, feeling the mounting pressure, eventually issued a brief statement. It wasn't an apology, but rather an acknowledgement that the conversation had escalated in ways she hadn't anticipated. She insisted that her intent was never to disrespect Reba personally, but to challenge the larger cultural dynamics around celebrity silence. The statement did little to quell the debate. Some appreciated her candor, while others criticized it as half-hearted. Regardless, it marked the first sign that Joy recognized the magnitude of the controversy. Entertainment analysts observed how the clash symbolized broader tensions in society. On one side stood the demand for celebrities to take bold political stances. On the other stood the insistence on personal choice and boundaries. The viral moment became a case study for media scholars, who dissected it as a reflection of America's fractured discourse. Reba's walkout, though personal in nature, transcended the studio and became emblematic of how individuals navigated respect and disagreement in a world increasingly dominated by sound bites and confrontation. Weeks later, Reba returned to touring, where fans greeted her with standing ovations and signs of support. Referencing the incident, she used the opportunity not to gloat but to reinforce her message of unity. Between songs, she spoke to audiences about the importance of listening, kindness, and standing tall in the face of disrespect. Her words, punctuated by her powerful performances, transformed the controversy into a rallying point. Instead of being remembered as just a dramatic exit, it became part of her enduring story of resilience. Joy continued to host The View with her trademark sharpness, but the episode lingered as a reminder of the risks of confrontational interviewing. Future guests seemed more cautious, and producers appeared more deliberate in steering conversations away from explosive conflict. Yet, paradoxically, the show's ratings saw a bump from the publicity. This highlighted the complicated reality of modern media, where controversy could simultaneously damage reputations and fuel success. Both Reba and Joy had walked away changed, though in very different ways. In the end, the clash between Reba McEntire and Joy Behar was more than a fleeting viral moment. It was a cultural flashpoint that sparked debate about respect, celebrity responsibility, and the boundaries of public discourse. For Reba, it solidified her image as a figure of integrity who refused to compromise her values. For Joy, it reinforced her reputation as a provocateur unafraid of confrontation. For audiences, it served as a reminder that even in the bright lights of television, the most lasting impressions are made not by sound bites but by how people choose to stand or walk away.